Okay. The last thing I'm going to say to you now, is this last point is on the slave trade as a dirty little secret. When you start talking about the slave trade, don't focus all your time and attention just on picking on European whites. Okay? You got to know something else. There was more than just one slave trade going on. And yes, we had a slave trade that brought maybe 15 million black people out of Africa into the Western world, into the Caribbean, into Latin America, into Central America, and into North America. That was coming with the Europeans controlling. You had 9 countries that were involved in the slave trade. They had 3 slave trade routes. You had the Atlantic Ocean. Everybody always talk about the Middle Passage. The Middle Passage wasn't anything compared to the other passages. And the Middle Passage coming across the Atlantic, where everybody likes to focus on. You see that on the wall all the time. The Middle Passage, talking about the European slave trade. That was one. But you had 2 other slave trades. You had also had an Indian Ocean slave trade that was going up out of Africa and going around through India, Pakistan, down into Cambodia, Vietnam, and the islands, New Guinea and place. That's why all those blacks are down in those islands. That's why all these Indians you see in this country that are darker than you all are, most of you in here, and they call themselves whites. They came out of the Indian Ocean. That's why you go through all those Pakistani Indians that are dark skinned, and the Cambodians, the Vietnamese. They had an Indian slave trade going around that way. And the other one was going right up through the Central, and that was called the Arab slave trade. But in all these slave trades, the primary producer and procurer for slavery were basically Arabs. You need to know that. I know it might hurt some of your feelings. I'm going to tell you, but Arabs, you cannot jump on whites and start talking about reparations from whites in Europe unless you also start talking about reparations from the Arabs. Okay? You got to get them too. And instead of when they start talking about oil wells, you all start saying, all those oil wells coming out of Iraq, they need to be coming to black folk in America. Okay? Arabs started enslaving black folks starting again. Initially, they started going into Africa in about 765 AD. But then when Musa made his mission to Mecca in the 12th century, when he's over Ghana and the Songhe Empire, he took his big trade mission into Mecca. At that time, he was throwing gold all along the streets. And the Arabs got very interested in going into Africa to try to find where all this gold was coming from. And they started in the 1200s trying to take over Africa to get hold of all this gold and resources that blacks had in Africa. They didn't do it for over 100-some years. They finally did it in the 1400s with the fall of Timbuktu. They took over Timbuktu, the Arabs took it over. So Arabs have been enslaving black folk. They were the initial enslavers of black folk for 1,300 years. They have enslaved over 13 million black folk, and the Arabs are still enslaving black folk in Sudan, Ethiopia, and Mauritania. Okay? And they are still selling black folk over there for about $475 a piece. You start talking about reparations, go after them. Go after them. You should be going after them first. Whites couldn't get into Africa. And the Arabs went in there and brought blacks to the beaches and to the oceans. Now you start talking about, yes, but we had some black Indian chiefs that were selling black. Yes, they were. But though they were not selling because they were black, they were selling because they converted over to Islam. That was the difference. They were selling for religious reasons because Islam says that a Muslim cannot enslave another Muslim. So anybody who was not Muslim was being enslaved. And they started pulling those blacks up through the Middle East into the Arab slave trade. They were pulling them up there so fast, and the 2 things they wanted. They were looking for young black girls between the ages of 10 and 15, and back during the slavery period, and they were making concubines. And they're still using a lot of that now. They're breaking them in, and at the same time, they were reducing black men to being what? That's right, eunuchs. They were castrating black men. In Basra, one time, I found something like about 28,000 black men that had been castrated. They castrated the black men during slavery, during the slavery period, so they could use them in their homes as domestic servants or as guards over the harem to watch their women, but to make sure those black men did not indulge in any sex. Within the Arab women, they castrated and neutered them, and they put them into the army, into the military. The military was training. They also used them as women by having neutered them. These are all the dirty little secrets you should know from a religious perspective, about names, about individuals and characters in the history. We have a very convoluted history, okay? And you start getting information. Make sure you get all the information before you go out so you're armed to do it and go out and fight. But black folk have made major contributions all over the earth. And I didn't get into all the things. And I know you're a little tired now, but I love you for it. And I'm going to conclude here. And next time you invite me back, we'll pick up where I left off today. And as of this coming year, Dirty Little Secrets #2 will be coming to you in your bookstores. Okay? Thank you very much.